Dude fucked a burrito. Literally microwaved it, walked out into the living room and started jacking off with it. Told us to try it. Burrito fornicator, his cousin, and I were all in 4th grade. What's the most effed up thing you saw at a sleepover? Sleepover in friend's basement with 4 of us there. I think this was 4th grade. Sometime around midnight the host friend's dad opened the door at the top of the basement stairs to ask if we wanted snacks, but right as the words started out of his mouth, he comes tumbling down the stairs and hit his head pretty hard. He didn't move for what felt like forever and we heard from the top of the stairs some delirious yelling. My innocent self thought it was the host's mom, afraid because her husband just tripped and fell. My other friend later explained to me that, no, the host mom was drunk off her ass and pushed the dad down the stairs. So yeah, I guess I witnessed a wife try to kill her husband. A friend of mine at school used to recount her side of entire conversations from the day in her sleep. Like a tape recorder. It was both weird and highly informative. I was at a sleepover at a friend's house and there were about 10 of us bundled into the living room. Me and another girl were last ones up watching some random shit on TV, think it was Speed. Anyways, one of the girls sat bolt upright and the light of the TV was reflecting off her face and her eyes were glazed over and she wasn't responding to anything we said. She then got up and we obviously followed her. We guessed at this point she was sleepwalking. Into the kitchen she goes, opens up one of the cupboards, pulls down her PJs, thrusts her hips forward and started pissing. We stood there in shock and hysterics and of course, none of us wanted to touch it, so we just kinda shut the door on it. Next day we could not get her to believe us, apparently had never sleepwalked before. One of my friends went over to his mate's house for a double date. They were watching Point Break and decided to eat cookie dough as a snack during. Owner of the house was absent-mindedly eating, not realizing that nobody else was. He ate any entire king-sized roll to himself. They all went off to bed and the owner went up to his room. Around the middle of the night they hear fucked up sounds coming from upstairs and all go to investigate, including the girl the owner really liked, because he is clearly in trouble. Owner was buck naked in his ensuite calling for help, shitting and vomiting violently and uncontrollably as the dough had fermented and expanded in his stomach, had to get the ambulance. Don't think they dated after it. Walked in on the girl I was dating fucking my cousin. Fun times. I slept over a friend's house when I was around 10 and we were playing Nintendo. At some point he yelled shit and without a word his dad comes storming into the room, pulled him up and just started spanking him in front of me, then took him out into the hallway to scold him. Then he just came back as if nothing happened but with a red face and teary eyes. It was the most awkward, uncomfortable night of my life, having to continue on pretending to have a fun sleepover after that, but I felt so bad for him I did my best. It was what I imagined sleeping over at Butter's house would be like. I have another sleepover story that always sticks in my mind too, but does not deserve its own post, so I'll just summarize here. Watched Aladdin at a b-day party, woke up later that night to friend's older bro jerking off noisily in his sleeping bag with the movie paused on a scene of Jasmine. Not something I saw, but one of my friends in high school told a group of us girls at a sleepover that she'd been babysitting the previous weekend and the girl reported to her that she was being molested by her uncle. My friend was so upset and scared to tell her parents. They were family friends, and hadn't told anyone. We made her go upstairs and tell her mom. Her mom called the other family, and we basically heard both her parents sobbing off and on all night. The other parents called the cops, and as far as I recall, the uncle was arrested and spent some time in prison. My friend was really scared she'd have to speak in court but didn't have to. At my buddy's birthday party, he had a bunch of us sleep over in a tent in his backyard. One of my friends said, "We are all guys, it's okay to be naked together." Well, some of the guys agreed and some didn't. I was way too shy to even be in my boxers around my friends at the time. Hell no, I was taking my clothes off. Well, birthday boy agreed. Micropenis. After seeing the other boy's normal-sized parts. Yeah, he cried. My friend's older brother would get mad at her for small things, went in his room, lost the TV remote, shut a door too loudly, and proceed to beat the shit out of her. Pull her hair and hold her down and punch her in the sides, literally throw her across the room. He was almost 10 years older than us and easily had 100 to 150 pounds on her. He would eventually tire from the beatings, leave the room, and she would go back to playing with me like nothing happened. I remember being so unbelievably shocked by it, but eventually became desensitized because of how normal it seemed to her, and how unfazed she was by it. Not really fucked up, but I was terrified. One night I slept over at my friend's house. I wake up in the middle of the night because I felt sick. However, my friend wasn't in his bed and both clocks were broken and stuck at some random time like 1:38 AM or something. I was convinced that time had frozen and everyone disappeared. I remember crying and being too scared to go downstairs to check the microwave clock. Eventually I went into his parents' room and woke up his parents. My friend was sleeping in his parents' bed too. Edit, word. When I was in elementary school, I got invited with my sister to a birthday party of one of her friends. Everything was going fine for most of the night, and then the catastrophe happened. Her mom came down to the basement and was clearly very upset, but didn't explain why. She then had each of us line up on the stairs from the basement to the ground level of the house and brought us in one by one. I wasn't the first in line, but no one was telling us what happened once it was their turn. Finally I was up, and her mom took me into the bathroom and showed me a trash can with a poop in it. She was basically on the verge of tears, pointing to the trash can and asking me, "Is this your poop? Is this your poop?" It wasn't. We never found out whose it was, or at least I wasn't told. We have joked that someone will finally come forward on their deathbed, but my sister and I have since lost contact with those girls, so we may never know. One time I was at a friend's house for a sleepover and he and another friend held me down on the couch and tried to light my hair on fire with lighters. I managed to break free and ran upstairs and asked my friend's mom to let me use the phone. Mom came promptly to pick me up. Needless to say, I was not on speaking terms with the other two again. My best friend at the time had a birthday sleepover, group of 9-year-olds, myself included. My best friend also happened to invite a kid that was often bullied at school. No one in our group had any problems with him and we just played like kids did. When it came to sleeping downstairs after a fun birthday party, around 2 AM the bullied kid started crying quietly to not wake anyone up. I, for some reason, was awake and asked him why he's crying. He begins saying that he can't stand getting bullied anymore and wanted to kill himself. For my 9-year-old self at the time, who had no concept of suicide and taking their own life, I could only remember thinking, why would he want to die, lol. It got to a point where I started freaking out because he wouldn't stop crying. I called my best friend's father upstairs, he came down and calmed him down. The bullied kid's parents came to pick him up around 3 AM because he would not stop crying. The poor parents didn't know their child had been struggling at school, immediately got him counseling, and his bullies were kicked out of the school after an investigation. From what I saw on social media last year, the kid graduated from university and is doing well. Looking back, it was incredibly sad and terrible that a 9-year-old was thinking about taking their own life, and I am so glad that I called my best friend's dad's help upstairs instead of ignoring him. I was 13 to 14 and staying the night at a friend's house with 2 other girls, when we were woken up by a loud popping noise from her brother's room. Naturally 4 curious girls went to see what the hell he was doing at 3 in the morning. Her mom came running up the stairs about the time we entered his room, and quickly herded us back out of his room in hysterics. It took my brain forever to register that he had shot himself in the chest. Luckily he survived, and I never had another sleepover at someone else's house again. Plenty of nightmares though. When I was in 1st grade, my mom got a second job working Friday and Saturday nights. I would stay at my best friend's house. This lasted like 2 weeks until I told her all the weird things that happened. My BFF was extremely skinny. She was way underweight, but her mom told everyone it was a medical condition. Her mom literally counted the grapes we ate. She had a very strict diet and pudgy me was starving. No processed sugar, no bread, no pasta. My fat ass was dying. Her dad would take photos of us. Once he called me into the office where he had my photo up in a bikini with my chubby stomach and legs. He proceeded to Photoshop my body and make me very skinny. He told me how much nicer I would look if I dieted. He also asked me to sit on his lap and play computer games even though his daughter, my BFF, was not allowed in the office and she was getting bathed. I ran away and knocked on the bathroom door. Her little brother was allowed to do whatever he wanted. We could only watch PBS. But he would have control over the living room TV and put in anything he wanted. We weren't allowed in the room if he decided to watch TV. He could also hit and punch us with no punishment. He was like 4. Her mom would give her bath because she couldn't be trusted to clean herself. She also had to wear the clothes her mom picked out. It was always really tight and too small. The second weird thing happened on the last night I ever stayed there. My mom flipped her shit and called CPS on them. She told me when I was older, my BFF disappeared to some private Christian school. When I saw her once in high school, she hated me and she was about 5'5" and maybe 99 pounds. I would be surprised if she ever was in the triple digits. I really loved the girl. Edited to add, her brother could eat whatever he wanted. We would have half a banana and 2 hours boiled egg for breakfast and he would have cinnamon rolls with icing and scrambled eggs with cheese. When I was in the 6th grade I was going to stay the night at a friend's house but we ended up at another kid's down the street. This guy ended up talking about how he would hump his bed until there was a wet spot on his boxers. He ended up doing this while we were in the room watching TV and then showed us the wet spot. And that was how I learned how to jerk off. I remember we did a secondary school bonding thing in our first year where you effectively go to a summer camp for the weekend with the whole year group, about 211 to 12-year-olds, to get to know everyone. Sleeping arrangements were in dormitories with bunk beds, separated by gender, about 30 to a room. Lights go out in my dorm, no teachers, just 30 11 to 12-year-olds that don't know each other that well. A kid farts. Hilarious. Someone else farts, a few others. Then, I vividly remember a distinct sloppy sound followed by a panicked "oh," a kid shat himself. I would also like to note, this was not the only public pants shitting by this kid. He did it again final year during our Duke of Edinburgh Award expedition overnight whilst camping. I was sharing a tent with him. That's a whole different story. We were playing hide and seek with my friend's little sister and I went into the unlocked bathroom while loudly saying where could she be? Maybe in here. The little sister was 5, we were 10, and the father was jackhammering his dick while staring at himself in the bathroom mirror and had his other hand tweaking his nipple. I left and walked home. Kid who had a pee jar in his closet. It was a gallon pickle jar. If he had to pee in the middle of the night he had to use the jar. Once his mom put us, in his room for the night. We weren't allowed to leave his room until she came to get us the next morning. How did they make sure of that? The doorknob was turned around backwards so they could lock us in. Holy shit, my inbox. Okay, the jar was for emergency use only and was emptied and washed in the morning if he used it. Probably. Rarely used it since most kids that age can hold it all night. He was a bad kid and stayed in trouble. Pretty sure the lock thing was to send him to his room and make sure he stayed there. Don't know about the parents' sexual habits, but I'm not surprised that most of Reddit immediately jumped on the drug-fueled orgies responses. I grew up in a very rural area of the southern US. A middle school girlfriend was having a sleepover and later in the evening her mom told us she, the mom, could talk to the spirits of dead people through her daughter. She got her daughter drunk on wine and hypnotized her. I don't know how long we sat in that room, but a lot of time went by with her mom demanding spirits speak through her daughter. Her daughter admitted to all sorts of terrible things, supposedly dead people's spirits speaking through her. This was over 30 years ago and I still remember it. I remember the mom sitting in a chair chain smoking and her daughter slumped over in a chair, seemingly dog drunk, slurring confessions of murder, suicide, being killed etc. She told us sometimes spirits would manifest in such a way that her daughter would attack her and tear the house up. It was really strange. Her daughter was a very quiet girl, the things that spoke through her were not like her at all. It was fucked up. When I was around 13 to 14, a kid I invited over to my sleepover birthday party decided to strip down to his tighty whities right before cake and ice cream. Myself, my parents, friends and relatives were mortified. Apparently it was normal behavior at his house. My friend's birthday party when we were 14 was a co-ed sleepover. We played Truth or Dare in a bounce house and somehow it devolved into licking sweet baby rays off various body parts. Started with a guy licking it out of a girl's belly button, and escalated to a guy licking it out of another guy's butthole. To this day I can't look at a bottle of sweet baby rays and not think of that. When I was 12, we went on a family trip to Vegas. I woke up in the hotel to my parents having sex in the bed next to me. I was trapped and had nowhere to go. My mom said something along the lines of "Stop, we're gonna wake up the kids." My dad gets up, walks over to our bed and rips the blankets off our faces and said, "See, fast asleep. I should have won an Oscar." Edit: I had no idea this would blow up. Thank you for all the love, strangers. I have no idea how this works. So this obviously messed with me going forward. Any trips after this, I just waited my parents out. They would say small things like "going to bed anytime soon?" and I'm just flat out like nope. They would fall asleep and I won. In hindsight, as an adult with kids, I do feel bad for co-blocking every future family trip, smiley face. I had a friend whose dad had a fish tank of Piranha. I really wanted to feed them a hot dog but her dad told me they already ate. During the night I snuck down to where the fish tank was and there was picked clean fish bones in the tank. The dad was down there watching football and he spotted me and asked if I still wanted to feed the piranha. Being a small piranha-obsessed child, I nodded and produced the hot dog I saved from the barbecue dinner we had. It was the most terrifying and awesome thing I have ever saw. 10/10ths would never want to watch 3 piranha go at a hot dog ever again. Least not in person. When I was like 9 or 10 I spent the night at a friend's house. I knew his mom was pretty strict but holy shit did I find out how much. He did something really minor like leave his socks in the living room and she started shouting at him like he left a turd on the floor or something. Then he pissed her off again that night and she wailed on his ass so hard that it scared me. She was a psycho the way she was spanking and shouting at him. I hated her guts after that night. Edit: I have no idea how this guy turned out. We moved away soon after and googling his common name is like looking for a John Smith. Also another guy with the same name was murdered in the same town. It wasn't him, so it's buried pretty deep. A kid walked on the backyard monkey bars, slipped, fell, hit his chin, bit his tongue off. The dad's mistress came over. Apparently the mother knew of her existence and it had been putting a strain on things. My buddy and I hid in the basement while the wife and mistress were screaming at each other upstairs. Shockingly did not cause a divorce. Woke up to my friend watching porn on the PS3. 5 of us at a friend's mom's house in high school, 17-18, woke up and there were 4 of us. One of the guys there was apparently in the mom's room fucking the guy's mother. The worst part? Apparently it wasn't a new thing, the mom had been picking off her sons' friends and F-king them to make her ex-husband jealous. Edit: no, I did not get a turn, but then again I didn't make a pass at her. I don't think he knew his mom was doing it. Everyone was pretty cautious to no spill the beans to him until after graduation. When he did find out, he was more disappointed in his mother than pissed at his friends. Seems like a really weird family dynamic. Found my friend's older brother's anime body pillow. He had clearly did the dirty with it. wasn't the night, it was the morning after. I was at a friend's house in the big city when I was maybe 8 or 9. I had gone to the bathroom for near 1 and gone out. Nothing strange. Then my friend goes in after me and comes back out. About 10 minutes later his mom goes mental and screams at me. At first I don't understand what it's about, but then she points me to the bathroom where there's a big puddle of piss on the floor. She made me clean up her son's piss, because he told her I had done it. Needless to say, I didn't really speak to my friend after that. Was an awkward breakfast. My friend starting having phone sex with her BF while we were watching a Pixar movie. I hid in the bathroom for like 20 minutes so I could convince her I was sick so I could get a ride home from my mom. We were also in junior high. I took a bath and when I got out my friend told her mom I had soap in my vag. I never said that and her mom made me get back in the bath and washed my bits for me. So wrong now that I'm an adult and think about it. When I was about 15, there was a couple in my cousin's congregation that offered to host a sleepover for some of the teen girls. I was staying with my cousin at the time, so I went with her to their house for the sleepover. When I got there, I realized that this couple only had one kid, and it was a little boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old. The couple set us 5 teenaged girls up in the basement. It was furnished and carpeted, not a creepy basement, and the wife set out a bunch of snacks and then we didn't see her or the little boy the rest of the night. But the 30-something dad spent most of the evening with us, offering us sips of his Kahlua drink and leaving the liquor cabinet doors open when he would announce that he was going to another room. I was creeped out, but I was so sheltered at the time that I didn't understand why exactly until years later. I saw porn for the first time. We were watching movies on my friend's TV and fell asleep watching. Must have been on Cinemax or something because I woke up in the middle of the night. It was a porno of a man and woman in the shower. That was really awkward since I was 13 and hadn't experienced anything like that. I was too scared to turn it off because her parents were up in another room and I didn't want them to know I was awake. So I pretended to be asleep. I eventually fell back to sleep, but it took forever. The worst was her parents fighting. They would yell, curse, hit each other, and were always drunk. What's the most fucked up is I stayed there so often that it became sort of normal to me. I didn't like it, but it wasn't something I could stop. I had so many weird and inappropriate conversations with her drunk mother. Conversations about me and my friends' sex lives or about her problems. The worst was when he shoved her into a metal pole and it bent. I didn't see it happen, but that pole was like a twisted monument to the violence that equally took place. All the sleepovers there in my teens messed me up more than I thought. If I told my parents the whole truth of how bad it was, I don't think they would have let me sleep over. Not me, but my friend's story. She went to a sleepover at a Catholic girl's house. The girl said the word penis and her mom beat her with a belt for 15 minutes straight. She never stayed at that girl's house again. Oh boy. Well, the opposite house to the living room had a visible bathroom. It was the back of their house, since the back of the houses were connected with their gardens. We saw a guy who had hung himself. That was really not nice. Had a giant sleepover when I was 8 or 9, I wanna say for a friend's birthday. He had all his friends over and his parents had also invited some friends over as well. As the night winded down, we all went into my buddy's room to jam some Super Smash Bros. Melee on his new GameCube. Fast forward to about 2 AM in the morning and most of the boys had fallen asleep save for a few of us. I had to go to the restroom horribly. I was holding everything in as I was terrified of using other people's restrooms in fear of making a mess or smelling up their bathrooms, so asked my friend where the bathroom was. I still don't know if I misheard him or was just stupid and forgot the minute I walked out of the room, but I somehow ended up at his parents' door and opened it up full force. My young butthole couldn't withhold the massive bowel movement that had been brewing, and found myself staring at his mother being banged by this dude that was at the party while his dad was sitting in the chair in the corner, getting a blowjob from the other dude's wife. I opened the door so quick they didn't even have time to semi-hide what they were doing. So there I was, 9 years old, frozen in place staring at his mother being plowed by this man while his dad was receiving head from the other man's wife. I still see their faces to this day. The only reason I know they were swinging is I could see every single one of their faces. They all just looked at me trying to process what just happened. After a good 5 seconds of dead silence, finally the father yelled to get out and I just shut the door. I stood there for what seemed like hours, then finally made my way back to the room, completely forgetting about having to take a shit, and just laid down. I laid there all night, wide awake, till 7 when my mom picked me up the next day. I never told anyone and never went to another sleepover at my friend's house or even went inside his house again in fear of having to see his parents and having that talk with him. TL Doctor witnessed a friend's parents swinging with another couple when I was 8 or 9 at a sleepover while just trying to find a bathroom edit because I've been asked so much. Lol, yes, I finally got to shit. After I returned home to the sanctity and safety of my own bathroom, and it was much needed. Girl put a massive ant in her vagina right in front of me like it was nothing. Same girl introduced my sisters and I to the choke yourself out game, where you take several deep breaths / hyperventilate and hold your breath until you pass out. Whoever fakes it had to sleep alone. Needless to say, my mom was pissed when she found us all unconscious in different areas of the bedroom edit. Thanks for the awards. I'm only 2 months into Reddit, so much appreciated. One of my BFF's dads tried to get me drunk and made a pass at me. I was 15 and staying at my one girlfriend's house. Her dad tried to be cool and buy us wine coolers. So she and I were up drinking and listening to music in her room. Her dad had to listening right outside of the door because when I went out into the hallway he popped right up in my face. He started getting way too close and handsy. This was not my first rodeo. I have been dodging my mom's sugar daddies / BF for years, so I saw what was happening and escaped into the bathroom. I pretended to be sick until he left the hallway. I was friends with his daughter until college. I just made sure to never be alone with her dad again. Sad thing is I wasn't her only friend who he tried things with, but we never talked about it until years later. My friend jerking off naked. Except his white socks. Kind of weird. Edit, this blew up. I never knew people felt so strongly about socks. It's nothing that I saw but more like something that happened to me. I was 13 when I stayed over at my friend's house for the night. We were up pretty late playing video games and eating snacks. I got thirsty, so me and my friend went to the fridge to get a bottle of Coke. When I opened the bottle, the soda shot straight up my face and got all over my white shirt. I asked my friend if I could shower since I was pretty sticky from the soda. Once I got out the shower, I noticed my friend and his little brother were knocked out in the living room sofas. BTW, I had no shirt on since the soda ruined mine completely. That's when their aunt came through the front door and saw me. She got close to me and started to rub her hands around my chest and shoulders. I was completely shocked and stayed still. Then my friend's brother woke up and saw what was going on. She stopped touching me right away and said, "Oh, I thought you were my nephew," then went straight to her room and never came out until I left the next morning. Even if I were her nephew, why the hell would she touch me like that? To this day I wonder what would have happened if my friend's little brother hadn't woken up. Edit, the aunt moved away and my friend seems well adjusted and has a family of their own. I'm okay as well. That was the first and last sleepover at that place ever again. It was a sleepover party for a friend's birthday. We were maybe 7 or 8. I was going to sleep on the floor, with a sleeping bag, no worries. I wake up to her dog walking over me like a blackout drunk, smelling like piss, not responding to anything, but still walking around and bumping into everything. Parents refused to bring the dog to the vet, and the birthday girl acted like it was nothing new. Basically, long story short, I watched a dog slowly succumb to a brain tumor at my friend's birthday sleepover. We had put up a tent in my buddy's backyard. There was a catwalk that his backyard had a gate to, that went down between the houses and eventually came to a school field. It was late, we were chilling in the tent laughing and eating snacks, when we heard voices coming down the path. There were shrubs along the fence line, except for the gate area, so they couldn't see us, but we snuck out, and hid in the bushes and were going to scare them when they walked past. But the closer they got, the older they sounded. One guy sounded really angry. So we decided to stay super quiet, let them pass, and go back to the tent. When they got just past the house, the dude was pressuring this girl to give him a blowjob right then and there. She didn't want to, but gave it after asking a couple times. We had to sit there for like 10 minutes until he came and were terrified that if we made a sound he would see us and kill us. We were probably around 12 years old. Scary shit. It was a friend's birthday slumber party, so there were quite a few of us. We were all sitting at the kitchen table and one of the girls vomited, and then in spectacular domino fashion everyone else started to vomit too. It was really bizarre. Edit, whoa, this really blew up to my standards. Thanks for the awards, kind strangers. Saw my friend's parents having sex. Parents had no idea me and my friend saw them. My best friend was sleeping over when we were about 11/12 and we were hanging out in my room, me on my bed and her on a mattress between my bed and the window. Out of absolutely nowhere we hear a bang and my wall-length window totally shatters, glass flies clean across the room and we are both covered. We both start losing our damn minds and run out of the room, both of us covered in blood and cutting our feet up as we run. My dad flies into action mode and locks us in the pantry, grabs a kitchen knife and runs into the backyard to look for anyone who may have been behind the window smashing. There was no one, so he calls the police and tends to our injuries. When the police arrive they search my room for a cause and discover a huge solid ball bearing, presumably from a truck. It had landed less than 20 centimeters from where my friend's foot had been. If it had hit one of us it could have killed us. There is no roads or anything near us and my room faced into the back fence, so to this day we still have no clue where it came from or how it was traveling at such a speed it cleared possibly multiple fences and smashed a window. My mum had been out getting us Happy Meals while this whole ordeal went on, so she was more than a little shocked when she arrived home. Not saw directly, but heard of. I had a friend in middle school who went to Texas to see family every year and got to bring a friend. I often hoped to be picked, until I heard that it was a tradition for her grandfather to graze his balls on the hands and face of whoever came with her while they were sleeping. She always laughed and said it wasn't a big deal, that's just how he was. I never mentioned wanting to go again, and only now as an adult, do I really how truly messed up that was. And if she was / is okay. Not a sleepover in the traditional sense as we were both in our early 20s, but I once had a friend visiting from interstate and I let him crash at my parents' to save him on accommodation costs. Trying to be a good host I let him sleep in my bed and I slept on the floor. Woke up to the sound of this shithead wanking in my bed. Who fucking does that? Still pisses me off to this day. I was about 10, stayed over my friend's house. He lived in a sketchy part of Sydney. A whole SBS series was actually released about this area called Struggle Street, and essentially, we stayed up all night, but we could hear shouting and screaming from a few houses down. Curious and scared cause we were 10, we went outside to try and see what was going on. When 2 houses down we saw a woman in like a tank top and tights. She was bruised and was crying, while a man was dragging her by the arm back inside the house. She kept pulling away, so he pushed her. She fell down the 2 steps out front and hit her head on the grass. She didn't get up after that. The ambulance came about an hour later. We still haven't spoken about that night since. Until now, I guess. Edit, this was 12 years ago, but I'm pretty sure she was alright. A friend of mine went to have a sleepover at his friend's house after the friend threw a baby shower. Not only was the friend's pregnant girlfriend drinking and smoking weed, but my friend said that he had to sleep on the floor and noticed things crawling along the floor. They were maggots. He ended up sleeping in his car. I was staying at my girlfriend's apartment one night and I was woken up by a very loud sound. I raised up and looked around, but everything was normal and she was still asleep, so I thought whatever, I must have imagined it. After falling back asleep, we were both woken up by the police banging on the door. The sound I heard was a gunshot hitting her apartment, fired off by a crack addict attempting to commit suicide in the parking lot. Not a traditional sleepover, but still some crazy shit. My mom screaming at us for covering the kitchen floor with water and dish soap at 2 a.m. so we could go skating. At the time I really couldn't understand what she was so upset about. But, Mom, we're helping clean. A kid got on the treadmill and put it as fast as it could go. He tripped and held onto the handles as his feet and legs were dragging on it. Skin was peeling off everywhere. He literally skinned his own legs. He is me, I was the stupid kid. Two friends were watching porn when my dad walked into the room, saw me on my bed and looked at them, saw the screen and just said fuck this. I'd have told them to stop, but the phone was facing the door and my bed was at the opposite side of the room. Got to the house, they had like a tiny string fence blocking the path to any carpeted area in the house. No one was ever allowed in these areas apparently. Except when he or his sister would have to vacuum, which was every single day. Then while we were in the basement, his mother yells for him come up. He had left a single plate in the kitchen sink. Which is apparently a huge no-no. She was screaming at him as we could hear her hitting him and him apologizing profusely, but she was relentless. He came down in tears. I wanted to punch his mother in the face. To add to this, he had a birthday. We were invited to do laser tag. All was good. We played and afterward we are all in his dad's vehicle. Dad asks us, well, what's next guys? And I just suggested we go down to the local mall. Just as a suggestion. Okay, so he drives us there. Everyone gets out except, wait, my friend isn't allowed to go to the mall. At this point I am beyond confused, cause like, it was his birthday. Why did his dad even bring us here? Why didn't he suggest something else or tell us to think of something else? Like WTF? They just drive away and the rest of us are left there wondering what a fucking psychotic family this is. But after that his dad hated me. I was a bad influence apparently. All because I made a suggestion. How the fuck was I supposed to know his 16-year-old son is forbidden to go to the mall? I could go on and on about how fucked these people were. My friend's alcoholic father passed out in a puddle of piss and vomit on the living room floor. When I was about 14, some friends and I had a camp out in one of our backyards. This was in a regular, older neighborhood in the city, but certainly not rich, but not the ghetto either, just a working class neighborhood. Anyway, I have no idea what time it was, but I woke up and there was this guy standing in amongst us as we lay there on the ground in our sleeping bags. He was just looking at us. I freaking froze, but I was ready to scream my lungs out as I watched him through the slits of my eyes. After what seemed like a year, he stepped out from between us all, went over and hopped the chain link fence and walked off down the alley. I immediately woke everyone and we went inside to tell my friend's mom. Obviously, we finished our sleepover inside. That was also the last outside sleepover ever. Edit, I didn't expect this to blow up. Thank you for the awards, kind internet strangers. When I was 9 and in Girl Scouts we had a trope sleepover party that was relatively unsupervised, and at some point girls just started reaching down each other's pants and ripping their underwear out. Other girls were shoving worn socks in each other's mouths and pulling hair. I just remember sitting in a corner and guarding myself with a ping pong paddle. Edit, wow, this story blew up. Crazy times were had in Girl Scouts, that's for sure. Thanks for everyone who's been responding, thanks for the awards, also thanks for sharing your own stories. I've been laughing my ass off all night about this. Not fucked up, but I was having a sleepover at my friend's house and I got this massive gas bubble stuck in my intestines. Anyway, I couldn't wake up my friend, so I slowly crawled to his mom's room and told her to call my mom. I ended up throwing up from the pain. It was easily the most painful experience of my life. Worse than any broken bone or fall I've had. Myself, a friend and his GF were all at some random friend's house, and all sleeping in the lounge. I'm lying there, more or less fully clothed in a sleeping bag in the lounge. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried to sleep in a sleeping bag indoors, but it doesn't work very well. They're designed on the assumption you're in a tent in the freezing cold. Inside a building they tend to get quite warm. Okay, stupidly hot. So, I'm lying in the sleeping bag, with my legs gently cooking, and I hear whispered voices. Is he asleep? I think so. Before long, my friend is frantically fucking his GF. And the only thing I can think is, my god, I need to take my trousers off. I haven't thought of this in years, but your post reminded me. All of my siblings and my cousins were having a big sleepover at my grandparents' house when my cousin, who's a couple years younger than me, woke me and my sister and told us his bum was itchy. We were half asleep and just told him to go back to bed, but he kept insisting it was really itchy and something was wrong. He pulled down his pajama bottoms and there were little white worms crawling from his bum and falling all over the place. My sister and I were horrified and ran and got our mum, who then woke his mum, and needless to say we all had to be treated for worms after that, cause apparently it's highly contagious and we likely all would have wound up like him from being in close quarters, playing all day, etc. The image of his wormy bum is burned into my mind for all eternity. This isn't really that fucked up, but hilarious. A group of us guys were over at our friend's for his birthday, somewhere around 8 to 10-year-olds. We were playing Monopoly. The game had already been going on for a while and had gotten a little heated. House rule was that if you don't realize someone is on your property before the next roll, rent is forfeited. I roll my dice and land on a property where S had owned the Monopoly. I quickly gave my dice to the next player G and he rolled. G moves on before S realized what happened. S blew up. He started yelling and screaming about how I cheated him out of his rent. S ends up taking all of his money and walks away from the board. G starts egging him on, saying things like, "You going to buy some fake toys with that fake money?" This pisses of S even more. It escalates into a real wrestle fight. 5 to 6 young boys all screaming and wrestling about fake money. Now this all happened somewhere around midnight after an evening of junk food and movie watching. We were in the basement of the house and the parents' bedroom was immediately at the top of the stair. The door in the stairs blows open with the dad. He has his belt in his hands and booms, "If you all don't stop now I will whip all of you." That silences us all. We settle down and realize that we should probably be sleeping. We all climb into our sleeping bags to try to sleep. S takes his over to the corner, with his money. G whispers, "You still going to buy those fake toys?" We all snicker. To this day S is still pissed off about that game. That was nearly 40 years ago. Technically I was the perpetrator, not the witness. Was like 12. Thought I'd force out a fart to be funny. Shit my pants, diarrhea came out my shorts on the floor of the kitchen. Nailed it. Sleepover at my friend's house like freshman year of high school. We snuck some girls over and around 3 AM or so his mom woke up and was making hers left a vodka drink when we came back inside. She had no idea it was that early/late and started cooking us pancakes and cookies. When she went to the oven and saw that it was 3 AM she flipped the fuck out and called all our parents and told them we were all having sex and shit. Not me but a friend. When we were 14, she went to a girl's house for a sleepover. Girl's dad let them hang out in the garage and drink beer. Later my friend was sitting outside alone, and the dad came out and started talking to her. Then he tried to kiss her, and as she backs away, the mom walked out and caught him. She started screaming at both of them, and told my friend she needed to leave. She was 14 and drunk, and the girl whose house it was told her mom that was bullshit and she was staying. My friend said she couldn't sleep all night. The next morning the mom took my friend alone into the bedroom and apologized and said they were having marital problems and he had cheated on her before. Hopefully it wasn't with any other kids. Edit, thanks for the awards. The place we grew up was a nightmare. I've got 1,000 more like this. I wish I could tell my friend how this blew up, but I never want to bring it up to her again. The legal age of consent was 14 at the time. Canada in the mid-2000s, and she probably thought it was her fault, after she got yelled at. And please, if you see someone abusing a child, or something doesn't seem right, say something. I'm so sorry you will have to suffer the mental image of this, but it was a classic high school sleepover. We ate tons of junk food and drank a good amount of smuggled beers, after which friend number 1 suggests we sneak into the community pool to go skinny dipping. We were all pretty reckless, so it came as a surprise when friend number 2 vehemently opposed the idea. He absolutely would not budge for the longest time. Of course, we eventually bullied him into compliance, as HS kids do, climbed the fence, dropped our drawers, and went for a dip. Unfortunately for us, it must have been a full moon that night because despite the lateness of the evening there was still enough light for us all to see. To our horror, the aptly named friend number 2 began releasing stream after stream of projectile diarrhea just moments after we all got in the pool. And yes, it looked exactly like what you're undoubtedly picturing in your mind right now. We also completely neglected to bring towels, so we ended the night with a long, wet, cold, and completely silent walk back to friend number 1's house. The next morning, friend number 2 pretended to have blacked out from his 2 beers and claimed he had no memory of the event. We are still friends to this day, and hilariously enough he is now my gastroenterologist. Well, not so much at a sleepover but after a sleepover. My 8-year-old daughter and her friend made a recipe which will live in infamy while my wife and I slept. I woke up the next morning, went to the kitchen to make some coffee. The first thing I notice is the strong smell of maple syrup. Next I see something that looks like cake batter that's not quite mixed all over the counter and the sink. I turn around and see it all over the refrigerator handles and door. Some of it was on the tile floor with footprints in it. This was just the beginning. Next I walk into the family room following the footprints in the dark blue carpet. In the middle of the floor is a couple of blankets in a pile. The maple syrup smell is now overpowering. I pick up the blankets to find a mixing bowl that had dumped on the carpet. It looked like they tried to clean up the mess with the blankets and then decided to leave it there. In the mix were pieces of eggshells and eggs that once again were not quite mixed in. This stuff had become like part of the carpet that it crept into. I could not imagine anything being harder to get out of the carpet. I literally spent hours with the Hoover carpet scrubber trying to get it clean. I put the kids to work cleaning up the kitchen and that was the last sleepover for quite a long time. I didn't really see it, it happened to me. Went to a church lock-in with my then best friend. Made the mistake of falling asleep first in a group of chatty, nasty girls. They dipped my hand in warm water, classic, didn't work, threw caramel corn at me all night and smeared toothpaste on my face so that it got all on the inside of my sleeping bag. I was confused when I woke up in the morning. I didn't realize until later that they were bullying me. My friend smacked in the ass with a cutting board for misbehaving. I learned my family was poor. Friend's house was like a mansion to me, when in fact it was a fairly average 2-story. They had nice appliances, good food, etc. Became keenly aware of the class divide that day. More hilarious than fucked up, probably fucked up for the dad, but when my friends and I were around 14 to 15 we'd download porn on my friend's dad's office computer in the basement and take turns rubbing one out. One day Kazar was taking too long to download so we ended up just calling it a night and going to bed. We were in our sleeping bags chatting when we heard his dad coming downstairs. Everyone got quiet except one friend who didn't hear the footsteps. In complete silence when my friend's dad was just getting to the bottom of the steps he blurted out, "Man, I really got a jack off." We still bring it up today almost 20 years later. My girlfriend's son had a sleepover on his birthday one weekend. It went okay, typical 13-year-old kid stuff, video games all night, hearing them raiding the fridge at 3 AM, hip hop keeping us awake. Some of the kids stayed all the next day, and a few spent the next night since it was a weekend. Long about Tuesday, we come to realize this one friend that we did not care for is still hanging around the house all the time. He had never left. This kid was always dirty, every other word out of his mouth was fuck, and he had this general tough guy in your face attitude. You know, the kind of friend you don't really want your kids to be hanging out with. Turns out his single-parent dad had kicked him out a couple weeks before, and he was living on the street, bouncing from one friend's place to the next. He had not seen his mom in years. She has mental and substance abuse issues and is constantly in and out of institutions. We let him stay, went to court for legal custody, and got him back in school. He lived with us until he turned 20, and now years later turned out to be a good guy, with a steady job, house, and family of his own. Sometimes just a little stability is all that is needed to make a difference. It was my birthday sleepover and my friends and I were in the middle of a game of truth or dare. It was fun, and being really immature we were in tears laughing at some of the less PG suggestions. All of a sudden my friend gets a call from their dad. In the span of 2 minutes I see their expression change from a laughing glee into a look of dread. Tears start rolling down their eyes and they tell us, "My dad said my cat just strangled itself in a plastic bag and she's being put down right now." We all stated in disbelief and comforted them until their dad came. After their dad came, the atmosphere changed drastically. My friend loved their cat more than life itself. Early 1990s, when I was a kid, I slept over at a buddy's house for the first time. The next morning we woke up and his mom made us cereal. The milk tasted hella sweet, even for my child taste buds. Something about it all seemed off. Just as my buddy finished his bowl of cereal, his mom came over and turned the bowl on its side to pour the leftover milk from the cereal bowl into a milk carton. The mom then did the same with hers. I felt my face turn red with shame and embarrassment and my stomach turn. Horrified and confused, I asked, "What is that? What are y'all doing?" He turned to me and deadass said, "That's our cereal milk." Turned out this sadistic fuck and his entire family poured all of the leftover milk from each bowl of cereal back into a separate milk carton, specifically for cereal. I drank this entire family's backwash. Fucking cereal milk. Used cereal milk. Reading this reminded me of a sleepover I went to when I was 11. One of girls seemed to be special needs, couldn't talk and needed assistance with eating. The birthday girl had told me she was her cousin and that her parents forced to have her over. I was a kind human and tried to help her whatnot. This went on for a couple of hours. Then she started having a seizure, which got me upset because, unbeknownst to them, my dad had died of one and I started to freak out. Turns out, she was pretending. Everyone was in on it and they laughed hysterically. They thought it would be fun to do that to me. I asked to call my mom so I could go home. Being bullied sucks. ETA, updated to add time range ETA 2, to clarify, the girl did not have special needs and she did not have a seizure. She pretended to have both. She was a friend of the birthday girl. I don't know what happened to all of them and they didn't know about the way my dad died. So I'd like to think, had they known that, they wouldn't have done that. Kids doing really dumb things without realizing the long-lasting impacts. How am I now? I have issues, like we all do, but I'm so very good. Married, great career, 4 amazing kids, and living a life that was out of reach when I was a kid. So if anyone reading this is struggling with having been bullied, you are not defined by these events. It can and will get better. I was in the 4th grade and me and 3 of my friends were sleeping over at one of their houses. We all had our sleeping bags in a row on the floor and we're getting ready to go to bed. My bag was up against the wall on my right and to my left was one of my friends. Note, he was really big for a 4th grader and I was very small for a 4th grader. As he was getting in a comfortable position, he rolled over on top of me. It wouldn't have been that bad if it weren't for the fact that he then proceeded to rip ass and thought it was funny pinning me down as I suffocated in his fumes. I tried to get out but I was stuck up against the wall. My friend taking a SHT with the door open. Not really something I saw, but it did happen at a sleepover. My friend's like 12th birthday party. Puberty is a thing, so we were watching late night channels that turn into weird like sex call line adverts. I don't know. It was really before internet porn was a thing, haha. Anyway, we all fell asleep except one kid who proceeded to call one of the numbers. A lot. For a couple hours. My buddy's parents got a phone bill in the thousands of dollars. I was too young to really care how it all turned out, but I do remember hearing his parents were trying to have the fees overturned and also trying to get the other boy's parents to pay for it. My friend was not allowed to have sleepovers for a very long time, lol. My cousin was sexually abused by her, at the time, stepdad, while I was in the bedroom, pretending to sleep. I was paralyzed, maybe because I already had traumas regarding sexual abuse. I felt so much guilt and fear at the same time. I started trembling and crying. When he noticed me, he left. She was 9? I think. I was 8. A not so great friend was staying the night at my house in grade school. She was getting ready for bed and burst into my room with a shit-eating grin on her face, saying that she walked by my mom's bedroom, saw the door was opened a crack, and witnessed my very obese, Asperger-having stepdad lying on the bed in nothing but tighty whities, stroking his junk with a come-hither expression towards my very obviously not into him, very obviously only into his money, mom. I never saw anything like that in the 10 years I lived with them. Pretty sure they virtually never had sex. To this day, I think she was lying, but the mental image is burned on my brain. Never invited her over again. People who don't clean their bathrooms and toilets. I've heard that one kid said he was gay just before he moved away and got invited to the girls' sleepover and then convinced them to show him their boobs because he'll never get to see any, so yeah, that was pretty fucked up. Went to a church camp and shared a tent with the pastor's son. Dude asked me if I wanted to compare. I didn't realize I was bi at that age, and declined. He then proceeded to jerk off into a towel he packed. My cousins made out. My friend not giving me a blanket. One of my friends when I was younger shared a bedroom wall with his dad's bedroom, and it was a frequent occurrence for us to wake up in the middle of the night to him presenting some rando from the local bar. Well, one time we fell asleep in the living room, and the local rando of the night walked in with my bud's dad, which woke us up, and it just so happened to be my goddamn aunt skeptical. My best friend spent the night after my birthday, and the two of us shared a bed. Woke up to them making out with and groping me, and when I asked what was going on, they took my hand and shoved it down their pants. Being half asleep, I was mostly confused, so I just pulled away and went back to sleep. When I brought it up to them a little while later, they apologized profusely, and said they were asleep and it's something they've been known to do in their sleep. My buddy went to the bathroom and yelled out, "I'm 201," and his mom came walking over and started to whip his ass. He was 10 years old. Pedophiles. This was 18 years ago, when cybersecurity wasn't as good as it is now. I was 12 years old, and my friend was sleeping over at my place. We went online when my parents were asleep and signed on to MSN chat rooms. When asked, A/S/L, we'd put 14 years/female/Ontario because we didn't want people to think we were kids, so we thought we'd put 14 years or 15 years to see if we could get some cooler older boys, think 15 to 16-year-old boys, to talk to us. We started getting crazy amounts of messages from men 30 years old, 45-year-olds, etc. talking to us, saying inappropriate things, asking perverted questions. When we told them we lied about our age and we were 12, they did not care. One of them even got on webcam and started wanking, and we were horrified and closed the window. As I got older and into adulthood, I realized how many regular people are probably pedophiles and living amongst us, and how easy it is to groom kids online. When I was 14 or so, I was staying the night with a friend and we were also babysitting her niece and nephew for a bit. While we were babysitting at her sister's, I decided to do their dishes, since the place was trashed and it seemed like the unobtrusive but helpful thing to do. I found their drugs in the cabinets. I was taller than anyone in their family, but, still, having a shelf of sippy cups and then a shelf with a Coke plate on it seems like asking for trouble. I just put clean dishes away around it. And I didn't tell my mom since I didn't want to be banned from going over to that friend's house. Friend Slab knocked him over and immediately started humping him like there was no tomorrow. We all freaked out, but his mom was like, just let him finish, so that happened. Later that night I sat up in the top bunk and got knocked the fuck out by the ceiling fan. Unfortunately I didn't forget the bestiality. Loneliness. There was a kid in my neighborhood when I was like 10 or 11. He didn't have a lot of friends, he was kind of on the rough side, but a pretty decent kid to talk to, maybe a bit weird. The first time I ever met this kid was like 2 years prior. He was smoking and asked if me and my buddy wanted to join. Anyway, he asked me at school one time if I wanted to have a sleepover at his house. I really didn't know him that well and just didn't really want to have a sleepover. So I gave some excuse about family in town or whatever. He said, okay man, no problem. This happened every 2 to 3 months for the next year or so. The second time he asked, I dodged him. The third time he asked was so sad. He showed up at my house at 7 p.m. on a Friday and asked if I wanted to have a sleepover. He said his mom just took him to the store for king-size candy bars and took out 2 giant Snickers bars from his pocket. He said they rented a movie, whatever big action flick of 1992, and his mom was going to order Little Caesars. Does that sound cool? I was not prepared for this. Shit. Now I gotta have a sleepover with this kinda weird kid. I said I guess, let me check with my mom. My mom, sitting right there on the couch, nods her head. Okay. Let me grab stuff. I mumbled as I invited him inside. We got into his car and his mom seemed really excited that I was finally able to sleep over. We drove into the upper lower class part of the neighborhood. We got out, went into his house, and straight downstairs into his room where he had his own TV. I don't remember if he had any posters on the wall. I don't remember if he had sheets on the bed. Shortly after we put on the movie, sure enough, here comes his mom with a pizza box and bag of breadsticks and 2 Cokes. We watch the movie, have awkward, paper-thin conversation, he suggests another movie, I fall asleep. The next morning, I think his mom made pancakes. He asked if I wanted to go play at the park. I said I had to get home to do my chores, which was a lie. I did do chores, but didn't have to be home until later. It was like 8 a.m. in the story. He offered to walk home, not far, maybe 2 or 3 blocks. I didn't really give it a second thought. He asked me for a sleepover again and I dodged that one. He asked me a 4th and final time. He said his mom has rented a Super Nintendo and Battletoads and they were going to make popcorn and his mom has Cokes again for us to drink. I told him I couldn't stay very long in the morning cause I had chores to do. He asked what if you did them tonight? I told him they take too long to do tonight, a lie. It was like 40 minutes of work in the suburbs of middle class America, and he offered to help. I kinda didn't prepare for this. Okay, I stammered. He came home from school with me and we did my Saturday morning chores with him doing an actually decent job. We went to his house and he did actually have an SNES. And we did pop popcorn and have Cokes. We woke up and he asked if I wanted to go play on the playground. I said I couldn't play long because I had to be home by 10 a.m., the truth. He asked if maybe I called my dad and asked to play until 10:30, would say yes. I said I wasn't gonna call my dad cause I know he'd say no, a lie. I don't think my dad cared one way or the other. He said that he would call my dad and ask. I said go ahead. He did actually call my dad and asked if I could play until 10:30. WTF was up with this kid? We went to the playground at the elementary school, then he walked me home. I don't remember talking to him again after that. I think his family moved away in the next year or so. And damn, I didn't realize at the time just how shitty this kid's life must be. He didn't have a lot, if any, friends. He was probably listening to drunk parents fight all the time. I know I was just a kid, but damn, those are some clear signs this kid needs a friend. I know this will get buried below anything that has 2 upvotes, and it took me forever to write this on my phone. But Eldon, if you are still alive, I'm sorry man. Thank you for the great sleepovers, my friend. Out of all the many 100 plus I've had, I remember maybe 15 of them. The 2 with you are clearly on that list. Take care. Not me, but my friend saw it happen to me. In the middle of the night he woke up and saw our other friends get up, look at him, walk over to me and put his bare ass on my head for a solid 10 seconds. My friend's tea had some of the tip shaved off and it gives me nightmares to this day. Not really fucked up for anyone other than me, but reading all these made me want to share. Got my first period at a sleepover. Her dad was a single dad, so obvi I'm not going to him. Mortified, sleeping bag just drenched in blood. I sit in the bathroom for how long, trying to work up the courage to ask the older sister for help. While she was understanding, she offered me tampons, not ready for that yet, and pads designed specifically for thongs. Why they even make those I'll never know. Another few hours mortified and in pain sitting in the bathroom, I slap as many thong pads and TP in my underwear as I can and just ditched the sleeping bag for a blanket on the floor. I truly became a woman that night. When I was 14 I slept over my friend's house and brought Everclear, 100 proof grain alcohol, so we could make twisted gummies out of Swedish fish and gummy sharks. Long story short, it worked better than expected. Her mom came in to talk to us about how now that we're in high school people might try to peer pressure us into drinking. We were just sitting there absolutely blasted / nodding off like yay. That would be like so messed up. Was around 12 to 13 at the time. Friend had a birthday party / sleepover, was about 6 of us left and we all slept in the living room when the party was finished. We were all passed out when at some point in the middle of the night, the living room television turned on with static on screen and audio at full volume. It immediately woke all of us up, and in a dazed state we all were panicking, trying to turn off the TV via remote or buttons on the front of it. Eventually one of my friends unplugged it, and it stopped, but that adrenaline rush and subsequent conversations of ghosts and whatnot kept us up the rest of the night. Friend's parents got rid of that TV shortly after. Stayed a friend's place. I knew her mom was abusive, which is why I hung around a lot. I knew she wouldn't do anything while I was there cause I was twice her size. Well, one night the mom got drunk and switched her tone. She comes banging on my friend's bedroom door screaming about how she was an accident and a mistake and a horrible daughter. She took a hammer to the door and smashed a hole. I stood at the door holding it closed / keeping her out. My friend just sat on her bed playing Minecraft, with such a blank expression. It made me so angry. When her mom finally gave up, I sat on the bed with my friend and convinced her she was safe and that she could let it out. She cried in my arms just about all night. The next morning I demanded my friend stay at my house for a while. My friend's mum, parents, but the dad was not around much, were super strict by my standards. I remember being fucking terrified as a child of sleeping over at this mate's place. And it was for good reason. We live in a rural area, my friend more so. His house was more rural than mine. I lived in a small town, he lived on the outskirts of a forest. His house was nice, but old school and all of the locks were latches instead of key locks. i.e., all of the doors were accessible from the inside and outside, including bedrooms and bathrooms. We had a nice enough evening up until a point. We were watching James Bond movies, my friend was obsessed, and if you hadn't clicked by my writing I am English. I don't recall how old we were. maybe 10, take or give a couple of years. I was a proper mama's boy at this time and I was pretty uncomfortable at sleeping over at a friend's place, more so because of the distance from home. But like I said, the evening was good up until a point. We were both immersed into the movie, eating pizza. At a certain point my friend's mum came into the lounge. She calmly approached my friend and gave him the biggest fucking slap across his face. I didn't notice it until I heard the noise. I was too immersed in the film. A couple of seconds feeling like much longer, passes. I'm contemplating what the hell just happened. He bursts into tears crying, gets up and runs upstairs. His mum follows. I don't know what the fuck just happened. Here I was with a mate, enjoying a movie, eating pizza, and his mum just comes up and annihilates his face with a brutal slap. They both disappear upstairs and I'm left on my own to contemplate what the hell is going on. I just stay there, not knowing what else to do. I guess I would wait to see what the news story was and if I was permitted to live. Later they come downstairs, matey with the red face positions himself carefully back to the sofa, much as we were previously. When his mum casually disappears out of earshot, I ask what happened. Turns out he was eating with his mouth open. As a child I was petrified of this guy's parents. I don't think I had many more sleepovers at this friend's place. There are more stories involving the absence of any privacy, locks, creeping me out more than previously mentioned, but I feel I've written his essay already. I'm from a pretty laid-back family, so to witness this, and extra, was messed up emo. Don't get me wrong, I know there's way more harrowing things out there as an adult. But from my upbringing this was super weird, and this guy's parents were one of the scariest things I encountered in my childhood. If he was punished that bad just for eating with his mouth open, what else did the poor guy encounter? Everything seemed very authoritarian. I didn't like it. Not really something I saw but was present for. He was playing a game while my friend's family watched. She and her stepfather were on a couch with a blanket over their laps, and she told me later he was running his foot up and down her leg. She said there was a time he used to molest her but had stopped till that moment apparently. When I was little, I had my first sleepover with a few girls from Girl Scouts. I had a really weird dream involving blood is all I can remember. I woke up the next morning and my hands were covered in a brown substance. Found out that one of the girls got a really bad nosebleed in the middle of the night. I'm still not sure how it got all over my hands to this day. Two spring to mind. When I was in my late teens I stayed over at my girlfriend's house. Her parents were very conservative, so I slept in the living room with her younger brother, 12, and his friend that he had over for a sleepover. Fine, you put up with these things to hang out when you're in teenage love. After everyone had gone to bed, the younger brother gets hardcore porn on the television. I, the guy who was banging his big sister, ended up frantically begging him to turn it off. I didn't want to be watching porn. I particularly didn't want to be watching porn with a pair of 12-year-olds. And above all, I didn't want to get caught by my girlfriend's conservative parents watching porn with her 12-year-old brother. There is no way on earth they would have believed I had nothing to do with it, it was all him. Funnily enough, my wife just saw me writing this and her conclusions was that is indeed fucked up. The other one isn't as bad, but I remember when I was 9-ish going over to my American friend's house for a sleepover and being really shocked in the morning when his mother came out of the toilet eating peanut butter on toast. Gross. I've been waiting for this question. We were in maybe 5th grade and I was spending the night at this kid's house for the first time. Let's call him Aston. So Aston is like, dude, do you know what sex feel like? And I was like, dude, no, we're in 5th grade. He told me to wait and left the room. Came back with a glass of water. Puts it on the ground and whips his dick out and starts basically planking over the cup of water with his dick dangling in it. I don't really remember my reaction, but I definitely kept my dick in my pants and we never really hung out again after that long. Super fucking weird. Thanks for visiting Reddit Town Hall. Have a great day.